Welcome, neighbours and friends. My name is Faisal Hassan. I'm your Member Provincial Parliament for York South Western. You're joining us live, YouTube channel, Faisal, and also those of you who are joining us Instagram. We are talking about a safe return to schools conversation with local educators and parents. I wish to acknowledge at this time the land that we are now known as York South Western is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, the Chapwe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuits, Métis people. Thank you for joining us this evening for this very important discussion. The safe reopening of schools is vital for many reasons. It is vital for reopening of the economy and for allowing parents to get back to work. But more importantly, it benefits our children's well-being by providing the valuable education they need and some sense of normalcy as we navigate this pandemic. Getting kids back to school 5 days a week is important. There is a consensus on this, but it must be done in a way that respects the health of students, educators, and the broader community. Joining me this evening are local parents, educators from York South Western. I'm happy to have you join us in this discussion, and I look forward to your contributions. Tonight here, I have Sarah Vance, secondary school teacher who lives in York South Western. Also, Julie Bison, a local York South Western parent. Also, we have Claudio, we have Valeria Milia, a local York South Western parent, and others are also going to join us shortly. So let's start with Sarah about the safe return to school. What do you think as a community member and also as a teacher?
Okay, so I live in the community. I've also taught at high schools in the community. So I've taught at Western Collegiate, George Harvey, and York Memorial. So I'm quite familiar with the area and with those buildings. Where to begin? I mean, we have schools that at this very moment are incredibly underfunded already. So before Doug Ford came into office, we already had a multi-billion-dollar repair backlog on our buildings. Many of our buildings have serious ventilation work order issues that haven't been addressed. And in fact, since Doug Ford took power and the Conservative government came in, they no longer publish that information. So we don't have that information anymore about which schools don't have existing ventilation that is at appropriate levels. So that's one huge issue and big thing that as individuals, it would be wonderful if you were getting on Twitter and saying, we need this information right away. We're also already understaffed. Our resources have been pillaged. So much of our technology was given away last year when students were needing to work from home. We don't have a lot of textbooks even anymore because a lot of those went during that time period. So in terms of high school issues, I don't know how long you want me to go on for. I could talk for days, so please feel free to cut me off.
Very good. Go ahead. Yeah.
You know, in terms of the basic issues, for me, some of the biggest issues in high schools, one is the quality of the buildings and huge issues. So George Harvey, for example, the entire math wing of that building has no windows whatsoever. So we already have ventilation issues in the building, and then we have no windows. So that's a serious issue. We know that the World Health Organization is saying that the 3 things that you have to avoid that are the most important to avoid for COVID-19 are like that close proximity, confined spaces, continued contact, and school does all of those things. So those are very, very serious issues for us. The lack of increased testing that would be necessary in order to ensure a safe September, the lack of increased staffing, and the failure to provide any kind of supervision or support for teenagers in a building. So for example, when I go to the store, if I go to No Frills to do my shopping, they have a worker whose job is to sit at the front of that store and hand out hand sanitizer, make sure that you're wearing a mask correctly before you enter. We don't have that in schools. So when you send your kids to high school, even if it's half of the children going at the same time, that'll often mean 500 to 750 students in a building at the same time with no supervision going in, no supervision in the hallways, no supervision in the washrooms. And those are, it basically means that any sort of clustering or confined amount of exposure is completely out the window. So those are a few of many, many serious concerns around this reopening plan.
Very good. I will bring Valerie Melia, a parent and a resident of York Southwestern.
Hi, I'm Valeria. My two kids go to elementary school. One is starting JK and one is going into grade 2. So the fact, A, they don't have to wear masks. Them wearing masks would be a complete disaster in and of itself. And then 30 kinders in a tiny, tiny room, probably sitting on the floor, because that's where they usually sit, is on the carpet, or they sit at shared tables. There's no way that there's going to be any physical distancing with those small kids that have no idea how to really safely keep their distance from one another. And there's no ventilation in the schools. Our school is so old and overcrowded. The windows maybe open up about 1.5 inches, if that, maybe 2 inches. You can't breathe in the classes to begin with. When my daughter was in JK and SK, she was in a pod, so it was 2 kinder classes where they shared 2 stalls of a washroom. So it was 60 kids sharing 2 stalls and a tiny cubby area for their bags. So it was 60 kids getting ready in these tight, tight quarters. So I don't think there's like a magic number to say maybe like 15 kids per class or 20 kids per class. I think they need to take into consideration how big are these rooms and how safe can we actually make these kids sit safely. So I don't know, it just feels like a lost battle, to be honest with you.
Very good. I'll bring Julie Bizon.
Hi, thank you. I'm a mom of 3 junior public school kids. My youngest would be starting JK in September. So I appreciate Sarah sharing your high school, what you think will be the high school experience, because I've kind of only let my brain absorb what the public or junior school will be like. But it is really scary. So I'm pretty active involved in my school, both on the parent council and just in my community as a whole. So people have been sharing their concerns and frustrations for a while now. I know for today, we were pretty hopeful that the announcement coming from the Minister of Education was going to shed a little bit more light and optimism towards what's going to be happening in 3 weeks. And I don't think we got that. I mean, I'm happy they're proposing a little bit more funding. And I'm glad that they actually addressed the issue of ventilation. However, we're 3 weeks away from school. That means absolutely nothing. I've already had my robocall to decide what I was going to do. So I just don't understand how, like, it's 6 months that we've known school was going to start in September. We knew this was going to happen and things weren't getting any better. So it's just really frustrating. And my big question to you then right now is what you are suggesting or what advice you're giving to parents, because we're kind of at a loss. I honestly, I think everybody feels that way, is that we thought that there was things happening, like the whole ventilation thing, for example. I thought for sure they were addressing that within the schools. I reached out to my principal to see if there had been any repairs in our school, and as far as I know, there hasn't been. There were repairs done to the school that was planned maintenance, painting walls and stuff like that, but I never heard anything specifically regarding anything COVID related, if there was no hand washing stations, if the ventilation issue was addressed. Our school, Weston Memorial is 100 years old, so it's definitely got an aging infrastructure, and that's not new. I mean, the problem's always been there. So it's just frustration all around and concern, like genuine concern.
Good, very good. It's very important that I think suggestions has been made was that to hire more teachers and other education workers to allow for more smaller classes, immediate funding for urgent school repairs and upgrades, including infection controls, such as, touch-free sinks and soap dispensers, funding for more school buses to allow or physical distancing, and additional support for students with special needs who are struggling at the moment. Sarah?
Well, two things. One, on the ventilation issues. So also to add to that problem, ventilation issues. So we have one category of ventilation issues in schools. Those are outstanding work orders for ventilation problems that haven't been dealt with. The money announced today does not, it equals $10,000 per school. That's what it would translate to. It is nothing to address those problems, even if you could do it in this short time frame, which of course you can't. But the other issue is that funding for schools is so low that many schools operate on 20% of their current ventilation capacity. So what that means is that 80% of the air in schools is recycled air, because we cannot afford to heat fresh air coming into the buildings. So if this government doesn't invest significant amount of money, we can't even do those very, very basic things for our kids to keep them safe. The other piece too, though, and I know that it's so devastating. And as you know, as a teacher and a parent, I have nightmares every night. I'm extremely stressed out, et cetera, like all of us are. But I would encourage people to think of this as, this is a grassroots struggle. And Ford and Lecce have backed down numerous times based on grassroots struggle. And so I would encourage people, keep on fighting, keep on fighting, keep on fighting right to the very last minute, because unfortunately, I think that's what it's going to take. And there are many different groups. So as education workers, we're actively organizing on an ongoing basis. And, as parent groups, the Ontario Parent Action Network has been very active. They had an incredible action at Queen's Park yesterday, modeling how big a classroom would actually have to be in order, like what the classrooms will actually look like and how unsafe it is, which was very successful. The Ontario Families for Public Education has also done amazing work. So I just want to urge people, don't give up. Like, get angry, call Doug Ford every single day, figure out how to tap into all of the existing structures, but please don't give up, because that is exactly what this government would like us to do. And when we do give up, the wealthy people will either keep their kids home, or they'll send their children to private schools that have smaller numbers. And for everyone else, and in a neighborhood like York Southwestern, we know what happens. This is an equity issue where, we're in a city where 83% of people getting COVID-19 are racialized people. It is that much of a clear equity issue. And those are going to be the kids largely that are left in schools to deal with these horrible safety issues. So we have to keep fighting. And I think we can win. I really do. I believe that they are shaken.
Absolutely. The government's supposed to be supporting the community. Funding schools need to ensure that parents and students and educators remain safe and healthy. It's very important. I'll bring Valerie Miller. Tell us what you're worried about. I think it's very important to have a safety is important for the children. A lot of parents are worried about, sending their kids to school because of a lack of safety and health concerns, as they also public health have also raised concern.
I'm worried about every aspect of them going to school. I'm worried about them sitting in class. I'm worried about them at recess. I'm worried about them eating their snack, about eating their lunch. Are they going to are they going to use a sanitizer that I've packed for them and have been instilling in their heads every single day? You need to wash your hands. You need to sanitize your hands before we eat. Don't touch your face. Don't go too close to your friends. I like if we'll get together with a couple of friends, I'm there. I can see them, I can stop them. I can't expect a teacher doing that for 30 kids all day long because I'm exhausted with 2. So I can't imagine with 30 like doing that constantly. I'm worried about who's coming in, who's supervising lunch. Is it going to be the teacher supervising lunch? Do they not get breaks? Who's coming in and out of the classroom? How many other classrooms is that person going into? What happens if somebody tests positive for COVID-19? Is the whole class getting shut down? Because according to the Catholic board, it's only the person gets sent home. That's not, if one has it in the class, the likelihood is that a couple of others, if not most of them, will have it. So that is one other issue that I have. Washrooms, sinks to wash their hands. Like it's everything I'm worried about.
Absolutely, and that is important to worry about as a parent, and as your representative, I'm also worried about because the government had an opportunity to make it right, to plan, and to do this requires an investment and putting resources to make sure there are more teachers, there are more support systems in place. It's track COVID-19 recovery school advisory group hasn't done that. That includes frontline education workers, parents and students and school boards to even listen to them, consult with the municipalities to find ways to use available public infrastructure so that school and childcare centers can resume in person as many children as possible in a safe and healthy way. I'll bring Julia to us what worries are.
A lot of things have already been addressed. It's more what can be done in the next 3 weeks? What can we do as parents to support our teachers and our schools right now? It's just an endless list of questions really that I have, because I don't even know if I'm sending my kids. Like, I don't know what to do. And I don't know if by not sending them, am I making, it's just like, I feel like that's almost what the Ford government wants, is for us to keep them out. It helps them. Then they don't need to support as much funding or something. I don't even, and then even if they do stay home, we haven't even been explained how that's going to happen yet, where their teachers are going to be coming from. I know there's a lot of parents in our neighborhood right now that are orchestrating their own little teaching pods, and they're hiring people to come in, and they've grouped together with like 6 or 7 other parents. And I guess theoretically that could work, but not when these kids are going to have all different teachers. I think everyone just assumed that it was going to be teachers from within our school community, so our kids are going to recognize the people that they're going to be assigned to. But that, as far as I understand, that's not going to be the case. I don't know if anyone else, if you know, I don't know what the answer is to that, because it just seems like anything that we do question, there's just no answers to. And then why, the biggest thing, ventilation was just on my mind earlier because of the announcement today. But the bigger question is, why are the class sizes not being kept smaller? How is that even possibly a discussion that we are still having? That was that's what we were fighting for even prior to COVID time. And it's still going on now, even despite this. It just seems like such a disappointing and upsetting fact that this is still a struggle that we're going through, because class sizes clearly are too high. There's too many needs within the class size. That's another thing that's not being addressed, is what happens then to these children with special needs. What happens to these kids that now haven't been in classes for 6 months and are returning to an environment that is so foreign to everybody, including the faculty, and 3 weeks out, and there's little guidelines, little advice, little suggestions, and really little hope. It's so scary. I'm thankful that our numbers in Ontario are as low as they are, but they're not going to stay that way. Not with the school that is being proposed right now. So.
Exactly. And how can we expect students to practice safe social distancing when returned to the same crowded classrooms they were in before the pandemic? Because we need to invest in education to have smaller class sizes. Parents have suggested The educators have suggested like 10 per class, and to make sure that, that school boards could have done also better with proper investment and resources from this current government. But instead, the Conservatives are cutting corners, and the safety of staff and wider community is being placed at risk. And this is very important, right? We are talking about safe return to school. And we have here local educators and parents who are also concerned, and we are all concerned about the safety of our children. And this is what we are going to send this government, a strong message that our kids come first and safety comes first, a priority. And this is not a good plan that a lot of parents are concerned now that they might not want to send their children, to school because they don't feel this plan is a safe plan. So what do you think, Sarah, you're a teacher. I know you're also a high school teacher, and high school teachers, kids also have more than one classes in high schools. So, they might be meeting across the aisles, and there might be large numbers of them. How are they going to practice a social distancing? And how are they going to be safe?
The bottom line is they're not going to be safe. That's the bottom line. They've changed the system. So the Toronto District School Board, I think, has struggled to make some good decisions, but with the limited funds that they have, they can't fundamentally address these really large issues. They did, though, decide to create a quadmestered program for high school students. So that means, so normally I would teach, we would have non-semestered schools, so students are taking 8 different courses. So they're with a huge number of different people in classes. Now they will be in 2 different courses, and it'll be capped at 15. And they'll be in the building every other day. But again, so, for someone like Stephen Lecce, who does not have a relationship with education workers and refuses to sit down with us or sit down with our unions and really learn about how schools work, that might sound good on paper, but in real life, first of all, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, they don't always follow the rules. And if we expect those kids to wear a mask all day long when they're in school, this is fraught with various different issues, along with trying to stay 6 feet apart from each other when they may be in rooms where that's physically not possible. But in addition to that, in some ways it doesn't matter that much anyways, because you have all of this hallway intermingling. So just to give an example, I work at a school that normally has 1,200 students. We have 3 floors and 2 separate wings. We are staffed with 1 person as a school safety monitor who monitors our hallways. 1 person. There is no allocation of funding to increase that. So even though the number of students will be reduced, so, best case scenario, 400 students in the building at the same time, how exactly does that 1 individual ensure that each of those students is maintaining proper social distancing in halls and in bathrooms? It's impossible.
Exactly. And this is also the Toronto Public Health affirms also parents' fears about this current government's back to school scheme. Public health authorities have now confirmed the worries of students, parents, and teachers and education workers about Ford Conservatives' risk, a crowded back to school plan. This is also a concern, and the public authorities, the public health, are also sharing the parents' concerns. So this is, in my opinion, it's still time. We have 3 weeks to go before the schools open. I think it's important that the government gets it and puts the resources needed to save the health and the safety of our children, because our children are are also the future of our communities, and to have them safe school, and also the teachers and the parents to feel safe requires that we listen to you. What are you going to send a message? I'll start parent Valerie, because I know there are many parents who are also feeling what you're feeling, because I've received tons of emails about the safe return to school, and I think there will be an opportunity. The minister now hears you. They will be able to. They are watching it tonight. So, what will you be saying to them if you have the opportunity, Valerie?
Put yourselves in our position. Pretend that you are sending your life into those classrooms, because my kids are my life. I do everything for them. So for me to send them into that environment is terrifying to me. And I hate that I have to feel guilty and worried that I'm picking work, having to work full time, over keeping them at home with me. It's not fair. I should never have been put in this position.
What about Julie?
Yeah, I share your sentiments on that, and I sympathize with the government as a whole, with everybody that's trying to find a way to actively make this happen. This is uncharted territories that we're treading, but the part that I cannot forgive is that they've had time to prepare for this. And we know education is our number one priority, or at least I feel like it should be, and I think most people agree. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the government does right now, the Ford government does. And that's what the biggest upset is. It's, and it feels like too little too late. I don't know what we can, that's what I just keep asking. What can we do? Yes, I'm going to keep fighting. I won't let down, but we have 3 weeks to go. That still doesn't change. Anything that we suggest is not going to happen in 3 weeks. Our children, our babies still need to walk through the doors of those schools, or not, stay home with us, and we have to struggle with the many issues that come with that. It still doesn't change the fact that school starts in 3 weeks, and they are not prepared at all in any way. So that's, I just keep asking, what can we do? What can we do? What are you suggesting that we can do, other than keep raising our voice, keep fighting? There's got to be something active. I mean, I feel like, at least from the announcement today, I truly believe that everything that was being proposed and suggested happened simply because of the uproar that has, the last 2 weeks. I think things really escalated. So it couldn't be ignored, and they had to propose a little bit more funding, but they still haven't answered any of the major concerns. Class sizes, even the ventilation thing, it's hogwash. There's no way that they're going to be able to do anything in the 3 weeks. They're still walking into unventilated schools in the middle of a pandemic. So it's just so, like, it's just frustration. It's just frustration and concern all around. And disappointment, huge disappointment, because I feel like the momentum, and the Ford government in particular, had kind of saved its face just by how well the pandemic was dealt with in the past, and our numbers going down. But it's almost like education in the school system was just forgotten somehow, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, this is happening and we need to do something, and we'll just send them all in. Just carry on business as usual, even though the rest of everything else is not business as usual.
I hear you. I'll bring Sarah to the discussion on that. I know the parents are concerned. I've been getting tons of emails, and many of them are saying that we will not send our kids to school, and the government has a responsibility at the moment to correct that, bring together students, parents, education workers, unions and schools, boards in an advisory capacity to help guide, COVID-19 recovery in schools, to address the needs of the students and parents, and especially their safety and their health.
Well, first of all, I think there are some excellent suggestions that have been brought forward by people who know what they're talking about how to do things safely for a safe September. It is possible to make a huge difference in how safe it is. And it is even possible to do that between now and September. So just a couple of examples. So hiring more teachers would make a massive difference. The other piece is, no, they don't have time to fix ventilation, but they certainly could use unused spaces. So most of our universities and colleges are completely online now. They could commission university and college spaces to run more classes. They could open up buildings that are not currently being used fully as schools, and we have quite a bit of that space. So there are options. Elementary Teachers Federation has put together a list of recommendations. Today, the Ontario Principals Council put together a list of recommendations. They have come from all corners. So there are options for them to do very important things that will make literally a life or death difference in this province, and maybe the things that stop a second wave. And the other piece is, you know, at the same time as it's gutting to hear you both speak about how it feels as a parent to have to put your kids into this just horrific situation, there is still power in that anger. And when Faisal says, you know, I'm being contacted by parents all the time, what I would say is there is so much energy out there and so much justified anger. The secret is to channel it, so that we're not all going out all over the place, but that we're channeled. And that's why I would say do two things. And maybe it sounds simple, but do two things. Number one, call Doug Ford's office every single day. Number two, join the Ontario Parent Action Network, so that rather than being one voice by yourself in a particular situation, you're tapped into a broad network of people who have been doing so much working and planning to create a campaign that has a meaningful chance of success, and is working on an ongoing basis to collaborate with education workers who we are also actively organizing as well. So that really, those would be my suggestions. And I fundamentally do believe that we can win this, because, you know, I'm a mom too. We don't stop fighting for our kids. This is not in our constitution. I don't stop fighting for my kid, even if I think I might not win. So we're not going to stop fighting. Yeah. And it's possible to win. So there it is.
Very good, very good. And yes, you mentioned about using other facilities such as the colleges and universities. I think it's important then the government funding for more school buses to allow for physical distancing as well also to bring students into those spaces to make sure, especially the high school ones, you know, students to have spaces like that. But I think what is happening here is more cuts to education rather than investment. So there's a lack of leadership here that's happening, and I think we need to listen to parents and teachers so that we put our children first. And first and foremost, safety comes priority, number one priority for our youngsters. And I think what is 3 weeks now is school is expected to begin, and we're not sure, you know, what's going to happen, because we don't know if we're going to have a second wave, you know, how the situation is, and we don't have a investment in education to plan how kids are going to be safe. To me, that is not a leadership, and we need to put investment. Education is important to the future of our workforce, to also our next generation, and for them to be safe now is important to have a healthy and safer school returned. I know that Sarah, you have been really organizing. You've been really, as a parent and also as a teacher, also you're concerned for your student, you're concerned for your children. And I think it's also is important for working together, parents coming together and sending a strong message to the government is also very important. I know is there ways others who are going to watching us now. We are live on YouTube, and we had a bit a challenge quickly to sign our Facebook tonight, but we'll be able to share that later on. But we are still live on Instagram, and there are many people who will be interested. We might also do again next Thursday this discussion to carry on, because I don't believe one time discussion is enough to talk about the importance of return to safe school. What do you say? And that's Sarah here.
Me?
Yes. I mean,
in terms of what to do?
Coming together, because we know parents are now feel powerless. They feel that no one is listening to them, and most of them, they are expecting a leadership from this current government. And I think it's important that they also listen to parents and understand if you are having this idea, the idea you brought forward is not working. We need small class sizes. We need opportunities to have a safer environment. And as Valerie stated, if one gets COVID, then they're sent home. What happens the rest of the classes? So are we going to shut down again? And it's not a leadership, and we need to also to hear the voice of the parents at the same time to propose them ideas that they could turn around and change their mind and invest now, here and now, because 3 weeks is coming.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we see historically again and again is when governments want to do things that are unpopular, or when they want to make massive cuts to things that we depend upon, if they're going to do that, they also need to make people feel like there's nothing they can do to stop them. Because if we feel like there's nothing we can do to stop them, then we give up fighting and they're able to proceed with their plans. So that's the first thing we have to reject, even as we sometimes feel it in our hearts because we're human beings. We reject that feeling. And we know we can look to examples in the States, for example, where, for instance, in Chicago and Los Angeles, teachers' unions fought incredibly regressive governments, and they won things we never would have imagined were possible in our schools, including like bringing in a public health nurse in every single school, stopping deportations for students who were non-status. So it is possible. The other piece, like as all of you I think have alluded to, is this issue about schools is of course not just about schools, because it reverberates through society and it touches other pieces, such as the issue that Toronto Public Health tells us people need to be kept home for 14 days if they have COVID-19, at least 14 days, and they need to be self-isolating every time they have symptoms. But of course, if this government refuses to give workers paid sick leave, that is impossible for most families in this very, very difficult city. So that is also another very clear, pragmatic thing that we need to be demanding. 15 in Fairness has been running a brilliant campaign to push for those demands. In continued CERB as well, like Valeria was talking about, this awful feeling of guilt around your own children and having to make those choices. If we had strong CERB packages that were extended, you might not be backed into such a corner. So those are really important things. And again, the central idea being know that we have power, know that it is possible, know that we can't stop fighting, know that we need unity. So join, like rather than being a diffuse force, join those organizations that are doing such brilliant organizing. Ontario Parent Action Network as a wonderful starting place, and we have to just keep on fighting.
Absolutely, and the official opposition is fighting alongside with you and in solidarity, because our children and our parents and our communities deserve better. They deserve a government that invests now, because we are in a period, in a pandemic, where we are global pandemic, and we have to have a plan that saves the entire community. The safety of our community and our children is an important, and to do that requires that the government listens, because they don't have all ideas. So if the parents, the teachers, and the public health folks have proposed ideas to make sure that our young people safety comes first, then I think what is the recommendation is to provide investment required. It's important also, as you said, guarantee that no essential workers currently receiving emergency childcare programs ends, that they are continuing to be supported. It's very important as well. I know, Sarah, you have to have another engagement. I'll give you your conclusion, your remarks for conclusion remarks first.
Well, I feel like I already talked a lot, but just know, as parents, know that education workers are coming together around this struggle. So just as an example, last week we organized as Ontario Education Workers United. So that's a cross-union network of education workers from across the province and across job classes, which often doesn't happen. We had a public meeting around this issue. We had 450 people register, and we had over 16 school districts represented at that meeting. So, and now we're actively working on our own campaign. So no, I do this job because I love the kids that I work with. I'm not going to give up on your kids, and we're going to keep on fighting. We can't give up. We can do this. We have to do it. We have to. We have no choice. So
Well,
we've got your back.
Absolutely, and we have your back, and you are our heroes. Teachers really do a fantastic job educating our children, and exactly, and that's also.
Oh no, it's backwards.
Yeah,
Oh.
you can see that. Yeah. Well,
It shows right for us.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, it looks right.
Fun, a safe return to school.
Safe September, and you can look for that hashtag that we're using too on Twitter and other social media platforms as a good way to plug in. Literally call him every single day. Because he may not care about you, and he might not care about your children. He does care about getting reelected.
That's right, and yes, and there you have it. Let others hear your voice. Let the Premier, hears your concerns, because our children are precious, and their safety, we have to protect their safety, and they come first. And now I will turn to Julie.
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you, Sarah. I wish I shared your enthusiasm towards this cause. I'm sure it's not real enthusiasm, that's the wrong word, but just your ongoing need to fight this, because I think if I were a teacher in your position, I would be not so, I just feel very powerless in this situation, because again, you guys have been fighting for these same, it's not even demands. These are things that should be in education. Smaller class sizes, more support for teachers, more support for students, ventilation, all these things should have been happening prior to the pandemic. But now we're in something that is so alarming, and again, uncharted territories. And it just, I would imagine or think and hope that there would have been so much preparation and thought going into these months prior to schools reopening. Like, it just seems like this should be one of the most significant priorities on any government's things to deal with in terms of a pandemic. So the fact that that hasn't happened. And the other thing that I just feel so horrible for educators and teachers is the tone that you guys are being addressed with when the Minister of Education is speaking in regards to you, and Ford as well, but more specifically the Minister of Education, who should be your #1 supporter. So it's so upsetting, and for parents to be listening to that, like I consider myself a more informed parent, and I have a lot of friends that are teachers and educators, so I get a little bit more of their perspective. But if I hadn't had that experience or those friends, it would be a really confusing time to be a parent right now, because I just don't understand how that relationship is met with such friction right now, and the fact that there's this challenge between the Minister of Education and unions right now. Like, all these, they just seem like these are not things that we should be dealing with in the face, and parents shouldn't have to be questioning what is happening behind closed doors, because my God, we have enough concerns to worry about right now. This should be something that should be seamless and flawless right now, and that everyone should be working hand in hand. So it's just causing, this is where the paranoia, the fear, the frustrations, the concerns, everything is stemming from. And yes, I keep saying I will definitely keep fighting, and I will keep telling people to do what they can. But it just, I don't know, it's so hard to not think that that's not falling on deaf ears right now. And it's so hard to think that there will actually be progress done, so that when they start school, they're in a better position than what they are, or what it looks like it'll be right now. So anyways, thank you, Sarah. You've definitely brought a lot of stuff forward today too, so it's very helpful and encouraging in some.
Well, thank you, Julie.
I feel like I'm so frustrated, but yet I do feel a lot of encouragement, and I do feel that even just from following educators and the groups that you do talk about, you can tell that there is momentum and there is power behind their voices, and that's a little bit more comforting. But it's still, I don't know, still feel very concerned for what's happening in 3 weeks.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you. And I will turn to Valerie now for your concluding remarks.
I just, you know what I would like to see happen before September is maybe Ford and Lecce stepping foot into one of our classrooms, and not like a brand new build with air conditioning. I want him to go to an actual school and just sit in there with a mask on for a few hours and see how it is. This is what they're proposing our kids need to do. So I think maybe they need to go and do that.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you to Sarah. Thank you to Julie. Thank you to Valerie. And thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you to parents and educators who participated in our panel. And thank you to all of you who have reached out to our office to share your opinions on the safe school reopening. I understand the anxiety this is causing families. Parents and teachers don't want an eyes closed, fingers crossed approach to reopening. They deserve thoughtful, proactive measures to help ensure the safety of staff and students and the funding necessary to make that happen. This government needs to stop delaying, roll up sleeves, and finally start listening to parents, educators, and public health experts who have expressed clear concerns with this plan. No one expects the work to be easy, but it must be done for the sake of our children and our community. Thank you again to Sarah, Julie, and Valerie for joining us this evening. Take care, thank you, and good evening. Thank you.